Welcome. God bless you. We're going to look. Susanna Wesley is the lady in question who we're going to look at. She's been called the mother of Methodism. If that doesn't really mean much to you, hopefully it will by the end of this. I'm going to jump into it because I can. So, Epworth, England. She's one of my fellow countrywomen, I guess, albeit she was born in 1669 and she died in 1742. And if you can picture, when she arrived in Epworth in England, she would have stepped down from her coach and she would have immediately recognised, I guess, the fact that she was in a village. She was in definitely rural England as opposed to the urban London where she came from. There was a tiny church within this rural setting, fields, like rustic village homes, flat landscape, fauna, I guess. Like I'm not a country person, mud, ditches, trees, that kind of stuff. She went to live in a rectory. And in this house, she would have 19 children. And she would, of those 19, raise 10 to maturity, which hopefully you can get the gist of that. She would spend the next 39 years of her life in this rectory. And her new life as the wife of a pastor in Epworth, as I said, was like pretty much radically different from her upbringing in London. And again, just like Catherine, was it Catherine of Vienna? I think yesterday's lady. Susanna was also the youngest of 25 children. Like for real, I can't get over that just happening once, let alone now we've got twice. She was homeschooled, as it were, educated at home, never attended a boarding school, never attended a college. Despite that, she was raised as a gentlewoman. Many of her lessons were added to by her father's encouragement of an intellectual atmosphere. He himself was a prominent London pastor. Dr. Ansley. He frequently entertained theological scholars of the time in his home. And one of these scholars whom he entertained was Samuel Wesley. And Susanna and Samuel married in 1689 when she was 19 years old. And their life in the country was pretty difficult for them both. Samuel was rigid. He, I guess, fire and brimstone springs to mind. He was moralistic in his pastoral duties and preaching, and he did have a fondness for fiery rhetoric. He didn't connect very well with his parishioners, who were certainly, in comparison to him, uneducated. They in turn viewed him as an outsider with some suspicion. And Samuel, was also city-born, city-raised. He wasn't a very good farmer. He also proved himself to be pretty much incapable of managing his finances and his land. And this was a job that fell to Susanna. She eventually oversaw that, in addition to running the household and homeschooling her children. Quite a few children, I think you'll agree. So over the years, what was already not very good relationship between Samuel and the congregants, his parishioners, it deteriorated. And like to the extent, like I feel that's an understatement, in as much as they eventually burned their crops. They did damage to the rectory. This is the villagers. And there was some abuse of their livestock also. They pretty much detested Samuel's royalist sympathies. And the pinnacle of this, I guess, was during the local elections of 1705. Samuel promised to vote for one specific candidate and then publicly, went against or repudiated his commitment. And this infuriated the denizens, I guess, of Epworth. And whilst he was away from the town, at the polling station casting his vote, the villagers began to harass Susanna, who had just a couple of days prior to that given birth again. They did this by shouting and firing pistols right outside beneath her bedroom window. And this went on into the evening. And this ended in like an astonishing tragedy when the nurse who had been caring for the couple of days old baby accidentally smothered the baby by rolling over in her sleep. And the nurse, of course, was, well, understandably hysterical. Basically burst into the rectory in the morning and just placed the dead baby in Susanna's arms. Things weren't going well, you could say. And not too long after this tragedy, an infuriated parishioner demanded that Samuel, who we should remember was awful at managing finances and broke at the same time now, this parishioner demanded that Samuel immediately pay a debt that was owed. And when he was unable to produce the required funds, he was arrested. And at Lincoln Castle, he was imprisoned for 3 months. In those days, there was such a thing as debtor's prison. This, whilst this was going on, meanwhile, back at the ranch, as it were, Susanna was left with 10 shillings on which to, her and her children and any staff potentially for them to live on during this time. Even after Samuel, claimed arson as the direct cause of the 1709 fire that burned the rectory to the ground, nearly killed their son John, who was trapped on the second floor during the fire. He never looked into moving to another parish. And he would argue quite stubbornly, "'Tis like a coward to desert my post because the enemy fire thick upon me." So, on top of their problems with the parishioners, Samuel and Susanna also experienced marital friction, let's put it like that. Theirs was the union of two very strong characters, says their biographer, Rebecca Lamar Harmon. She also says Samuel's quick-tempered pronouncements were met by the calm, well-reasoned opinions of Susanna, who on her side had difficulty in changing once she had made up her mind. And when their son John, who I just mentioned, was an adult, Susanna kind of frankly admitted to him that she and Samuel rarely agreed on a particular matter, and this included their politics. So you recall that the villagers were not best happy with Samuel's royalist affections or beliefs. However, this was one thing that he and Susanna agreed upon, and they both believed in the divine right of kings. However, they disagreed over who was entitled to the divine right. So Samuel supported William of Orange, you may have heard of him, and Mary, when they supplanted the Stuarts in 1688. You must remember. However, Susanna thought that William of Orange was a usurper, and she refused when Samuel, prayed for him to say amen. I love a little rebel. And they both refused to budge on the issue until Samuel basically said, Suki, that was his name for, if that be the case, we must part. For if we have 2 kings, we must have 2 beds. Whatever. Sorry. For her, like on her part, she said, love this lady, that she would apologize if she was wrong, but she felt to do so for expediency would only be a lie and therefore a sin, i.e., if I was wrong, I'd apologize, but I ain't lying about it. That's my translation of that. So they both stuck to their guns, kept their words, and she believed that William and Mary were usurpers. They had no right, and that the divine right belonged to the Stuarts only. Since I'm willing to let him quietly enjoy his opinions, he ought not to deprive me of my little liberty of conscience. She wrote this to a friend. And neither of them, as I said, would compromise, budge, give an inch. And as a result, Samuel left the rectory, the family home, and moved to London for 5 months until the death of King William and subsequently Anne's accession to the throne. And this caused him to move home. So, in spite of stubbornness, the disagreements, the having their house set on fire, the livestock, sorry, I'm not laughing, but they weren't really having that good of a time of it. They did have love for each other and respect for each other and themselves. And she was devoted to him, in spite of the fact that he couldn't, as I said, manage his money. That's a running theme somehow. I feel like Catherine Luther had this as well, yeah. So, yeah, he's not... Oh, so sorry. I feel tired. That's why I feel giggly. He is not fit for worldly business. She said this to her, their eldest son, also Samuel, like Samuel Jr. She did add, though, where he lives, I will live, and where he dies, I will die, and there I will be buried. God do so unto me, and more also, if aught but death part him and me. It's very sweet. Okay, so let's just have a rundown of what Susanna gets up to on a daily. She oversees a busy household. She manages the land belonging to the family. She participates in the parish duties, which were expected of a minister's wife. She single-handedly educated her large family. And in order to do this efficiently, like to homeschool so many children, basically having your own school, she established a systematic method from which she very rarely deviated. So as they got older, they learned reading, writing, arithmetic, and the classics. You remember that she didn't progress past her basic education herself. And they also learned how to recite the Lord's Prayer, to memorize scripture, to honor the Sabbath, and to basically have decent manners, to mind their manners. There was no such thing as loud playing or talking aloud of, she explained, but everyone was kept close to business for the 6 hours of school. Rising out of their places or going out of the room was not permitted except for good cause, and running into the yard, garden, or street without leave, i.e. permission, was always esteemed a capital offence. So she believed definitely in the importance of a varied and thorough education for girls as well as boys. She had pretty, I don't want to say hardline, but definite opinions on how this education should be delivered. An example of this is that she believed girls should be taught to read before they were taught how to, domestic chores and how to manage a household. For the putting children to learn sewing before they can read properly is the very reason why so few women can read fit to be heard and never to be well understood. So she was strict with the children. However, she was gifted as a teacher and she had an immense amount of patience. I wonder at your patience, Samuel, is recorded as saying one day, after observing her, repeat and repeat and repeat the same instructions to the same child. You have told that child 20 times the same thing. He's marveling at her patience. If I had satisfied myself by mentioning it only 19 times, I should have lost all my labour. It wouldn't have been worth it, was her reply. It was the 20th time that crowned it. And she saw the education of her children as a necessity of value and as her most important motherly role. More than this, she considered it her personal ministry. So, yeah, it wasn't only their intelligence and, their future work endeavours, livelihoods that were at stake for Susanna. It was also their souls. And on the subject of subduing the self-will out of her children, where was she when I needed her? This is what she said. Heaven or hell depends on this alone, so that the parent who studies to subdue, in brackets, self-will, in his child, works together with God in the renewing and saving a soul. The parent who indulges it does the devil's work, makes religion impracticable, salvation unattainable, and does all that in him lies to damn his child, body and soul forever. So she weren't joking. I'll come to you in the chat later. Okay, so, right, despite how committed she was to her children's education, there were certainly times where she felt pretty underwhelmed at their societal contributions. After her daughter Amelia read aloud to Susanna about a Danish missionary, Susanna decided that her own contributions to making a better society, like, in the form of her children, was just lacking, that she wasn't as good at it as she could have been. So after this, she vowed to change her situation in the only place she had control over, which was her own home. And she began to see that her children may be deficient in her individual attention. And therefore, like as if she hasn't got enough on her plate, she established a rota, a rotating schedule of evening conferences, if you're not too shy. And during that time, she met individually with each child, basically just to discuss, whatever was on their mind. That could be of a spiritual nature, or it could be just ordinary concerns. So, whilst during Samuel's pretty long, frequent absences to London, she would host evening worship services in her kitchen. Samuel wasn't a fan. He didn't approve of that. Potentially, it slipped his attention. It didn't matter that the kitchen services attracted more participants than the guy who'd taken over from him, the Sunday morning services. He just refused to condone her actions. Guess what she did? She stood her ground and replied, "As to its looking particular, in brackets, unseemly, I grant that it does. But so does almost everything that is serious, or that may anyway advance the glory of God or the salvation of souls, if it be performed out of a pulpit or in the way of common conversation." Go on, Susanna. So, yeah, she remained determined. She remained strong-willed, stubborn, I guess, assertive. And she just carried on with the kitchen services. That was it. She referred to the kitchen congregation as our society, and she conducted the services in pretty much the same way that Methodist societies later formed by her son John, who you recall almost died in a fire when he became a famous preacher, John Wesley. The kitchen format followed him through. So she was also, with all of her children, certainly, but John, she played an important, influential role when he first began to consider ministry. Samuel, his desire was that his son would continue into higher education. Guess what? Susanna, not so much. No. She urged her son to become ordained as quick as you like, soon as possible. I think the sooner you are a deacon, the better, she wrote to John, she referred to higher education, which you remember is Samuel's wish for him, as trifling studies. So, he was a good boy. He followed his mother's advice and was ordained a deacon by the Bishop of Oxford in 1725. And this would basically dictate the course of the rest of his life. And now we come to the death of Samuel. This was 1735. Susanna at this point went to live with John, her son, at what was called the Foundry. And this was Methodist headquarters in London. Even though she went to live with her son, she wasn't initially convinced by the teachings of the Methodist movement. The more, though, that she entered into a discussion with her sons John and Charles about their newfound religious experiences, the more she witnessed herself her son's remarkable accomplishments, the more enthusiastic she became. And soon she was teaching classes to women at the Foundry itself, herself also. And she was taking part in meetings, tent meetings, open air tent meetings that, when I say, were starkly different from the Church of England. That's no throwaway comment. Because she'd attended the Church of England all her life. She helped to convince her son John of the benefit of lay preachers, who in turn assisted in the spreading of Methodism around England and beyond England. I am content to fill a little space if God be glorified, she wrote. If we, on the one hand, if we consider that her contributions by our standards or by secular standards of success, were the yardstick that we used, she wouldn't rate very highly in terms of massive impact and, all of that stuff. She didn't preach ever a single sermon. She didn't publish any books. We're not talking divine, revelation and visions and stuff like some of the other ladies. She didn't found a church. She didn't, establish any convents or anything of that kind. And we wouldn't, in fact, really have any historical interest in her or knowledge of her today if it weren't for her sons, her most famous sons, who were John and Charles. And I guess that brings up the question of, why am I speaking about her? Why do I consider her an important Christian woman? Her method, for want of a better word, her structured, disciplined educational standards for her children, and the way in which she raised her children shaped them, most certainly, more so, I guess, than children today are shaped by that. Your mother's influence is massive in your life anyway in the early years. However, they had no secular schooling. They didn't, they were formed, as it were, educationally by her alone. And particularly her sons, also her daughters, she made a great effort with their education, but she, caused John and Charles to be upstanding citizens and pretty important spiritual leaders. Their ideas have shaped lots of stuff since then. She had a commitment to being God's collaborator, as she kind of put it, in the saving of souls, primarily her children, and then outward, like she was of critical spiritual influence on her children, and they in turn then influenced like lots and lots of people. But she's not just their mother. She's not just the mother of Methodism, as she's been given that title. She can be a role model, whether you agree with her theology, because certainly I've seen some of it in my, not this module, I feel like it was the last one, but it doesn't solely rest on whether you agree wholly with somebody's theology, because one of my most like cherished, is that the word? Favorite doesn't seem to do it justice. You don't have to. Spurgeon, for example, he's got the most beautiful sermons. I just love reading them. They're just very intelligently and like thoughtfully put together. And he was such a young man when he did it. I definitely disagree with massive parts of his theology. C.S. Lewis, I mostly agree, but there is like one stark, glaring like discrepancy between our theologies. But even as Spurgeon says, if somebody loves your Jesus, like you can't not love them. And therefore, Susanna not only influences her children, who go on to influence, certainly in England, like my ancestors, I guess, on some level. She was, they were in London. But she can be seen as I won't say a role model for women, because that just sounds naff. But yeah, her writings are also very considered for somebody who didn't have a further or higher education, or like trifling, what was it? I can't remember what she called it. She can be a means by which we can reevaluate our own like attitudes to education of what's important, because certainly now, like secular education, like it's enough to try and get a prayer in a school, like let alone consider the souls of the children who are being educated. She had a steadfast nature. She was determined. She was considered, and she didn't let even her husband's basically opinions get in the way, because she knew what was best for her children, really. And therefore, like, she's an example, certainly. She showed also that the things of the church are not where like the spiritual life, as it were, begins, but it's at home, or it can be at home if you're lucky enough to have a mother or father who's got faith. She also, I guess, like nowadays, she's a reminder, I guess, that parenting like isn't just changing nappies or I don't know, providing snacks and like sticking them in front of the TV. I don't know, like that there's not only societal concerns with good manners and good behavior, etc., but it's more about the inner child. I don't mean like as an adult, but the inner child of the child to consider. And it's in that she teaches us the value, if we didn't already know it, of not only saving souls but renewing them, and the massive impact that can have, like the ripple effect throughout the church eternal that she's had. So that's what I think about that. So I'm not sticking around too long because it's a bit of a longish day today. All right, everybody. You got, oh shucks, I should have finished like really promptly, and then it would have been a half-hour vid. Never mind. You've got like a few minutes if anybody has a question or a comment or a really massive urge to not type anything while I'm asking. Oh gosh. Bill, yeah, the thing is that can't really be laid at the feet, you know what I mean? Like the fact that a lot of churches have bowed to secular twaddle, as I like to call it. You know, the church does go through phases, I guess, of being far too like interested in what's going on in the world, and then like getting involved and then distancing itself again, and I feel that it loses some spiritual authority when it kowtows to like nonsense. Right, Mike? Thank you for letting me know. That's one down for you to go. Yeah, all right. Last orders, gentlemen. I don't know if there's any ladies I didn't see. You right, Repent? It's good to see you, as per. John, always a pleasure. Armour of God, I did see you a second ago. Like you just went scooting up the page, as it were. But also always a pleasure. Now I feel bad without scrolling up to see who else. Everybody, because you're not causing trouble, it's also a pleasure to see you. Right, last orders, gentlemen, please. I'm going to press the button anyway, just to make myself feel assertive. Maybe I'll do a couple of shorts tomorrow on some of the stuff that went down in Crazy Town today at the park. It's the weather. I know it is. It's the way. It was absolute madness. Like there was some crazy stuff. Oh, okay, Ivan. I'm gonna click the not yet button. There is actually a not yet button. Okay, so the question is for anybody who, like, if you're watching this when it's not live, repent. That's a backhanded compliment. You're welcome, and I may delete your comment. No, thank you. A log as well, a log day. Yeah. Right. Is there a difference between a Brit and an Englishman? Isn't it just the same? This is asked by a non-English or British person, I'm assuming. And it isn't the same at all. And I'll tell you for why. Let me get it right now. Okay, so we have 4 different countries that make up. No, we don't. We have 3 different countries that make up Great Britain. Along with Northern Ireland, this forms the United Kingdom. So Great Britain and Northern Ireland make up the United Kingdom. So if, potentially you're born in Scotland, you will be Scottish primarily. However, because of the Union, and I feel like that was William and Mary's time, who we just mentioned. Yeah, I feel like it was. The Union of England and Scotland, certainly. Thank you, Bill, for speaking. Yeah, so you could be a Scottish British person. You could be a Welsh British person. You could be a Northern Islander, like a citizen of the United Kingdom, if that makes sense. You can't become English or Scottish or Irish, Northern Irish or Welsh. You can become British. You can become naturalised, as it were. You can come from another country and apply to become a citizen of Great Britain or the United Kingdom. And thereby you become British to all intents and purposes if you renounce your original nationality, but you cannot become English. So that's, or Scottish or Welsh or Northern Irish. So that's the diff. I hope that helps. That's it. Unless anyone has another question. Oh, sorry, I've pulled some muscles as well. Yeah. Oh, fudge. I don't mind, like 1 or 2 more. So, yeah, different points in history as well. If somebody's referred to as, at one point there was just the union of, it's so complicated, the history, but yeah. I mean, a long time ago, there were many kingdoms within these isles, as it were, and then they were divided up. They don't necessarily work independently. They do have devolved parliaments. Okay, so I can't keep up with them, actually. So, yes, Scotland, is it Stormont? They have their parliament building. Boom. They run Scotland to all intents and purposes. Wales also has its own government. Don't know the address. They definitely have it. Northern Ireland has or had a parliament of its own. And, of course, England has the... I can't think of the right word. the executive, the legislative, the House of Commons and House of Lords, i.e. the Houses of Parliament, which ostensibly govern the United Kingdom from a centralised point. However, within our, everybody's our parliament, but it just happens to be my parliament, as in terms of I'm from England, you will find representatives from the four kingdoms, the four countries, I should say. However, at differing times in history, I believe certainly at the moment, potentially Northern Ireland, their parliament devolves. They are run ostensibly from London, and yeah, it just depends. There can be years without any. It's not autonomy. That's not the word I'm looking for. But yeah, they are all Westminster. I mean, now that we're out of the EU, certainly Westminster is supreme in terms of legislation for the entirety of the United Kingdom. But of course, yes, they have some autonomy. However, if they wished full autonomy, they would have to hold a referendum in order to leave the Union. The Act of the Union is the piece of legislation, I feel that's most relevant. They have had that referendum in Scotland, and thank goodness, from my point of view, they said, "Nah, you're all right, son," and they stayed. They said it in a Scottish accent, though. So yeah, the English Parliament, or the building which is in England, which is parliamentary, does, yes, make rules that affect both Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland also. So yeah. Any questiones? I mean, I know a little bit about. So within Britain, we've got the executive and we've got the legislature. So the executive is the parliamentary party that is in power at the time. And we've got branches of government. The other people who can make laws other than the legislature and the executive, i.e. the opposition of the House, like the House in its totality, and the party that governs is the judiciary. So if legal precedent can be a new recourse of the law. Acts of Parliament only, obviously the clue's in the title, goes through Parliament. Prior to that, Westminster, even though it was supreme within the United Kingdom, we were beholden to the European Union Parliament. So yeah, that's it. The Houses of Parliament are made up of the House of Lords, which can be a hereditary thing, or it can be bestowed by a royal, like by the Queen. She can make you a lord or a lady, as it were. And the House of Commons, and it's called the Commons because the people are not lords, and therefore they are common people, as it were. Like it's a class thing. And it's not always been in Westminster. I don't know enough about the history to confidently assert when that happened. Yeah, it's lovely. I've been inside, it's very beautiful inside, and it is. I feel like it's open to the public. I don't know about now because of all the COVID-y type stuffs. But yeah, thank you very much, Asif. Colonialism, Ivan, I don't understand. Sorry, I don't know at which point you typed that, as it were, like in respect of what? You mean the beauty of the Houses of Parliament, maybe? Or yeah, I don't want to guess what you mean because I don't know. I'm not maybe I'll do a video on it one day, but I'm loath to, as a Christian, certainly, I'm not that keen on adopting these I don't know how I want to put it, current narratives about the history of my country, certainly, because just as other nations are afforded grace in terms of their histories. Like, I wasn't there, certainly. I don't feel that statues also should be removed. And the reason I don't, doesn't really, to me, if the contemporaries of the person who is now like immortalized in statue were not railing against the practice that they're now being, people are chanting for their removal, life was very, very different. For a start, Susanna Wesley was one of 25 children. Things were different, let's put it that way. Also, if you, even the most odious people, not the people, the practices, if you remove them, I feel like the underlying thing is to remove traces of history and therefore make it easier to repeat history. Like Sir Winston Churchill, they've, there's been protests about his statue and wanting it removed. And I just can't fathom it at all. Like, obviously, I can see the argument. He was literally Antifa. He was fighting the fascists, the Nazis. Like, he didn't have a very good opinion of Islam, though. So I'm not for one moment suggesting that comes into it. But you know what I mean? Shocking. He oversaw a terrifically difficult time in British history. And he just deserves respect just for that. Like, I don't know when it became so, like, acceptable to just be, like, what's the word? Like, you can't be screeching for diversity and equality when you don't afford any equal opportunities for people to have any other ideas other than the ones that you're screeching about. You can't call for diversity while telling everyone you have to believe this. It's literally Orwellian doublespeak. Like, it. Don't get me started. Had a long day, darlings. Nice, Martin. That means, so the Palace of Westminster was built in 1016, so basically 400 years after the grounds of St Paul's and Southwark cathedrals were, I can't think of the word, sanctified? It's not hallowed. I'm not really sure. Consecrated, that's the one. Yeah, we got some history going on in England. Come and visit. It's quite warm at the moment. Come to Speaker's Corner. It hasn't got that long of a history, but it is a royal park. And I'm going to do that. That's what I'm going to do. Not visit London to go to Speaker's Corner because I live here. That'd be silly. But I'm going to make a video about the history of Speaker's Corner. I'm also going to blow my nose shortly. Just thought I'd share that with you all. Because it gets quite painful. Yeah, so you're not born. Oh, you are actually. Excuse me. British isn't like English, Irish, Scottish, and Welsh are in their original forms ethnicities, as it were, whilst the term British is it's a nationality. Like it's, does that make any sense? I don't know. It does to me. Like I say, if two of your parents are English and they move abroad, before or during a pregnancy and the baby is born elsewhere, the baby can claim, in one sense to be English, but they're not born in England, so technically, but they can choose a dual nationality. They can have the nationality, if their parents stay there, they can have the nationality of the place they were born and maintain their British identity, even though they were not born in Britain or naturalised. Yes, we had the War of the Three Kingdoms. I vaguely remember studying that. The Welsh just seem to tag along. Like, the big problems are usually like Ireland, Scotland. I went the wrong way, Scotland and England. But bless the Welsh. They also haven't got any part of our flag. Like the Union flag, I got to sniff because I can't find the tissue. It's ridiculous. I haven't had a tissue in this thing. Okay, so the Union flag, which is, no, it's not, because I've got it's mirrored on the, yeah, it's that one. But it doesn't have the little curly whirly bits and all that. is made up of the country flags for England, Northern Ireland and Scotland only. Excuse me. I'm so sorry, but I just can't cope. I do apologise. Either way, oh, still there. Either way, if you have a look, the red vertical and horizontal cross is the cross of St. George, who is the patron saint of England. The blue that you can see, the Scottish flag is a blue background with a white X, which you can just see around the edges of the red X. So that's Scotland with Northern Ireland is the red X on a white background. So that's the X that you can see. And then on top of all of them, like sealing the deal, as it were, is the cross of St. George. I see. And it was St. George's Day recently. Yeah, Mohammed, a British passport doesn't, yeah, the place of birth doesn't have to be Britain, obviously, because you can become a citizen of Britain by legally applying, etc. Oh gosh, Martin. Okay, in 927, 12th of July, round about tea time, there was the unification of the Angles, which is where and the Saxons, which is like the Anglo-Saxon, if you see what I mean, and the Danes. I feel like they may have wandered off again and become Vikings. Was that Norwegians? Either way, the history is such a mental, convoluted history. I did like British history when I had some like royal family trees, I guess, and different like things in my room on the wall when I was little. They just had such good names, like I don't know, Ethelred and things like that. I just found it interesting. But yeah, there was the Kingdom of Wessex. There was Mercia. Yeah, I feel like that was one. I don't want to make it up as I go along though. But yes, if you come from a country like Australia or I didn't mean to be smirking, or like the United States or Canada. Oh, they're like teenagers. Yeah, we've got more history than all of you lot put together. Not bragging. Just saying. So actually, I'm going to now that the weather is very pleasant, I shall, and once I've just sorted out some like a funeral type stuff, I'll start doing some walkabouts again, and maybe rather than just churches, I'll take you to some historic sites if they're free to get in. Yes, the blue on the flag, Built for Speed 101, is the flag of Scotland is a blue background, solid blue with a white X. So that is the Scottish flag. If you were to take off the red X and the red cross, if you see what I mean. Yeah, the St. Andrew's cross. That's it, because St. Andrew was crucified not on a cross, but on a cross, if that makes sense. Sorry, it would be like that, but my shoulder aches. No, Mohammed, I've been to quite a few places, but no. But I do have family there. So, yeah. Right, I'm going to press this button again because this has got away from me. You're very welcome, Built for Speed. And yes, Martin, thank you for being my phone a friend, or my, whatever you call it, my 50-50. Yeah, all right, maybe I'll do all right, let's not get carried away, Kate. I haven't even got a pen and paper next to me, but someone reminds me in the comment section about Speaker's Corner history. I feel like Comment Warriors can help me out with this one. And maybe a little bit of church history, as in modern. When I say modern, I mean like in theological terms, like the last 500 years of England, or yeah. Let's do it, peeps. Let's I don't know, the more we understand it, the less likely we are to repeat that load of nonsense. I tell you what's a good piece of history, I'm going to end it, is after the Reformation, when there was certain Calvinistic or like Puritan, can't remember which one it was, they just went mental. They decided, like, they thought they were the elect, obviously, and therefore they thought there was nothing they could do to lose their salvation. So they started basically misbehaving rather a lot, like in terms of grown-up stuff and drinking and partying. And Mohammed, it's too long of a list, but quite a few. I've been blessed with like the ability to travel quite a bit. Most recently, Canada, Germany, Spain. That's just like the last three off the top of my head. Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah, I've been to Belgium too. Okay, I'm gonna literally wrap it up because it was going to be a nice little snappy 30 mins, and now it's 50 mins. But yeah, I may clip it down and put it on the little channel because I can again. I don't feel like it detracts from anything not having me waffling at the end. Yeah, I'm overtired. That's it. I'm going. Right. Thanks for your company. Appreciate it. And yeah, I'll update you all tomorrow about some of the madness from today that I didn't get on the stream. That's how tied down. And I can't breathe. So basically I'm going, you're very welcome, Martin and John, and all members and all admins and all peeps and subscribers. If you haven't already, just do it. What's the problem? Also, the bell thing. It drives me mad about the bell thing. It keeps telling me to tell you about the bell thing. So it's a little picture of a bell. You click it and then click all, then you'll know. You might not know because sometimes they don't notify people. But yeah. Spain. No, Mohammed, it makes a difference whether they have a Catholic history or like an Enlightenment history or their recent, last 500 years, etc. Like it makes a difference. There is and different places in big countries also, but yes, I'm going to push the button. Well done. All right then. Lots of love. Ciao. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye bye.